Hey there folks, this is Pop Culture, I'm Alex Pop, and this is part 4 of my spoiler talk for Jurassic World Dominion. Sorry about how slowly these videos are trickling in, I'm just trying to be sure that I'm satisfied with everything that I'm saying. Getting all of my thoughts on this movie out there is not something that I take lightly. In this part, I'm going over one of the things that I was looking forward to most in this movie, which really doesn't narrow it down at all since I was looking forward to everything about this movie. But the hype continued to build for me when, shortly before production resumed, it was announced that the lead antagonist would be Dodgson, the head of research at Dodgson, now CEO, who hired Dennis Nedry to steal the embryos in the first JP movie. Campbell Scott replaces Cameron Thor as the character, and he has decent resemblance to Dodgson 30 years older, though I think the main priority with casting for the character was finding someone who looks exactly like a billionaire elitist like Tim Cook. Now, Dodgson was sort of the overarching villain of both Michael Crichton novels. He was a menacing individual who pulled no punches with anyone standing in his way. He throws Sarah Harding off a boat and into the sea in the Lost World novel. And he goes to criminal lengths to fulfill his research. A paragraph of the first book tells about how he tested a rabies vaccine on Chilean farmers without them knowing it. Campbell Scott described Dodgson in Dominion as being that person that he was in the books, so it was pretty exciting that he was being brought back as the antagonist for this final film, and I thought it would be a great way to round off this story with some of what it started with. However, this would prove to be yet another underwhelming aspect of the movie. I know that actors may be obligated to say certain things to draw in a wider audience, but I really didn't see anything that legitimizes what Campbell Scott said about the character in this movie. He's quite unthreatening here. He doesn't go to any extremes to assure that nobody ever blows the whistle on him. When he finds out that Ian Malcolm invited Grant and Sattler to infiltrate his Locus operation, he fires him, and then nothing else. He just fires him. The Dodgson I know from the novels would have fired him and then released a dinosaur on him on his way out. So instead of an on-screen representation of that villain from the books, we get this curiously passive corporate leech, whose only real unhinged moment is when he realizes that his entire plan is officially in the toilet, and out of frustration, he's just waving his fists wildly in the air like he's at a disco party or something. I just know that short clip of him is going to be the next Pennywise dance. Campbell Scott is fine in this movie pretty much up until that point. And it does kind of make me wonder what Cameron Thor would have brought to the character had he kept his hands off of Jordan Liddell. As for Dodgson's evil plan to use these genetically engineered locusts to make Biosyn the dominant of the world's food supply, as I have constantly lamented about, it's an idea that I'm not against per se, but an idea that I'm 110% against in this particular movie. As part of the mismarketing, the locusts appeared in the trailers only once, and my presumption was that giant bugs were being thrown in just to make the world feel even more quasi-prehistoric. Had no idea that they would actually invade this dinosaur movie as the driving force of the story. I did put together that those bugs were what made Ellie Sattler suspicious about Biosyn. I just figured that her journey would lead to bigger discoveries about the company that pertain to the global dinosaur crisis. And therefore, I wasn't put off by the appearance of the locusts in the first trailer. In fact, before I even saw the movie, this was giving me the feeling that the movie would contain parallels to the Book of Exodus, as Fallen Kingdom had echoes of Genesis. We saw locusts, we saw fire raining down, and we even saw intruding frogs if you think about the frog DNA in some of the dinosaurs. So something I kept an eye out for as I watched the movie was the possibility of it including all 10 plagues of Egypt, at least from a certain point of view, all of which are a result of man playing God. And the idea is there. It's most clear when Franklin Webb, who now works for the CIA, is like, what else is this godforsaken year going to throw at us? A really obvious 2020 reference right there. And the guy next to him says, well, historically we'd be getting blood, lice, darkness, all that crap. At which point I was almost shaking my friend's shoulders saying, there, see, what'd I tell ya? However, the only other parallel to one of the plagues that I was able to pinpoint was when Dodgson shuts down the Hyperloop while Grant, Sattler, and Macy are on board, and in the process making darkness fall over them. The aftermath of the Mosasaurus capsizing the fishing boat at the beginning would have been the perfect time to see water turn red, but that doesn't happen. To be fair, though, I'm not sure exactly how they'd be able to work in lice and boils into this story. But wouldn't it have been clever if at some point Dodgson mentioned that he was an oldest son? That way, when one of his own doings becomes his demise, it's like after he's been unleashing all of these plagues on the world, it suddenly flips on him. He is the firstborn who bites the dust. So not a major complaint, it's just another idea that I don't feel like they went all the way with. And sure, I do like the poetic justice of him getting killed by Dilophosaurs, but when all's said and done, why do we really care that this is the man who hired Nedry to steal the embryos from Jurassic Park? You could have replaced Dodgson with a non-previously established villain and Biosyn with a no-name corporation, and it wouldn't have left any less of an impact. An effective way of establishing Biosyn as the most sinister antagonist yet, I think, is if we learned that they had a secret presence in the series that we didn't know was there. A prediction I had made for this movie is that we would find out that there was a mole in the Jurassic World lab sent by Dodgson who helped design the Indominus Rex, secretly to give it abilities that would enable it to take down the park, and thus crash Mizrani Global, obviously another corporate rival of theirs. I mean, it would have added up. Biosyn has Giganotosaurus and Therizinosaurus in their possession. The DNA of both was used to create the I-Rex, even though neither species was featured in the park. This didn't happen, but even without it, if Biosyn's scheme in Dominion was about stoking people's fear of dinosaurs and trying to present themselves as the world's savior, that would have driven home the theme running through the whole series that it's man's desire to control nature that should be feared, not nature itself. And therefore, this brings more significance to the fact that this is the instigator of the chaos at the very beginning of it all. What else that would have made a great bookend is the involvement of the Barbasol Can. In the first movie, the attention being drawn to the can getting buried was, at the time, intended to be set up for the sequel, but then Michael Crichton wrote the Lost World novel, so there was a change of plans. I never considered it vital to follow up on the cryo can, but still, a number of Jurassic fans, including myself, were interested in seeing a version of what Spielberg had originally had in mind. Perhaps we could have discovered that Dodgson did get it back. Maybe not in time before the embryos expired, but he still could have worked around that and used the DNA to further his research. And in this last movie, we see the result of how his plan developed over time. But no, this leads to one more thing that was quite a waste. The Barbasol Can is in the movie, and that's it. It's just there, in Dodgson's office. No context or explanation at all. The callbacks in the prior two Jurassic World movies, I think, get more crap than they really deserve. The only one I personally found too distracting was in Fallen Kingdom, when Macy struggles to close a door with a raptor charging toward her, just like Lex in the first movie. But it was mostly just little things that were still woven into what was going on. The Barbasol Can in Dominion is the definition of a movie shouting at you, "Hey, remember that?" Yes, and because I remember, I'd like to know, how did Dodgson find it? Why did he want to get it back? Was it somehow retrieved in time? If not, did he ever find any use for the contents at all? No one watching the movie has any darn clue. And don't try to use this as a way to make Camp Cretaceous relevant. That ship sailed the moment the Brad X appeared. And that same ship is now dropping off the edge of the Earth with this.
With Manticore's new tech, you won't just watch the show, you are the show. It was time for Thomas to leave. He had seen everything.
P.S. I'm not watching Season 5. I'm tired. So, what are your thoughts? You agree with my points? Disagree? What did you think of how Biosyn and Louis Dodgson were utilized in this movie? Whatever it be, let me know in the comments. And be sure to stick around for part 5 of my spoiler talk, in which I'll be discussing the collision of all our heroes. That's a wrap, thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed this video. Like and share, subscribe for more. This is Pop Culture, I'm Alex Pop.